Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week, I'll be talking about, not for any specific reason, Engage Kiss, original anime made by A-1 Studios. I say original, I will clarify that, but let's first start with the disclaimers. Basic disclaimer. Spoiler alert, I'll be talking about everything in the plot, although there's not much really to talk about here. There is a plot twist, let's say, near the end of the anime, but at the same time it's not really important and it doesn't actually make such a shock factor as many of the plot twists that I have avoided talking about in the past, so I feel pretty comfortable talking about that. When I get to the plot twist, you may as well just close this tab. I mean, this anime is not really great, spoiler alert, right? But I will be talking about why I don't think this anime is really that engaging, let's say. So before I get ahead of myself, let's start with the stats. So Engage Kiss is first and foremost a multimedia project made by Aniplex. It started off with the manga that started the run on July 2nd, 2022. It ended up being one volume. I don't know if it is still publishing or not. The one thing I can confirm is that it has one volume. And then the anime series that came after, made by A1 Picture, A1 Studio, A1 Picture, A1 Production, you know what I'm saying, that ran from July 3rd, 2022 to September 25, 2022 with 13 episodes, no OVAs, just the normal anime. Besides that, there is also the mobile game called Engage Q, made and published by Square Enix, and as I said, mobile game. From what I can gather, it is still running and is part of the universe of this series. So before I start with the story, let me get some things out of the way. For the most part, this is a bit of housekeeping and explanation of why I'm reviewing this, and also the context in which I have entered this review. So for one, I plan to do let's say a little shift on how I make these reviews, and not in the way that I will change my methods in the way I analyze things and all, but more in I want to do a deep dive later on this year on a specific theme, a specific genre of anime, and for that I want to, let's say, clear my bucket list. So I'm basically taking out the skeletons from the closet and finally watching things that have been on my list for some time now that I can actually remember. So these next 3 episodes will be about anime that I have on my bucket list that I have not watched yet. So the first one is this, and the second and third one we'll see more later, but basically, spoiler alert again, Licorice Recoil for the next one, and then Boshi the Rock, because I have not watched them both yet, but I hear that they are good. Now for the context of why I'm reviewing Engage Kiss. So Engage Kiss came out right about the time that Licorice Recoil came out too, from what I remember. And I remember that the first time I saw something about Engage Kiss, the marketing materials for Engage Kiss, I remember that I distinctly said to one of my friends that also saw it, that the main character that appears in the thumbnail really looks like Inori from Guilty Crown. And me and my friend, we are really big fans of Guilty Crown. Me a bit more, but that's besides the point. The thing is, we both like Guilty Crown a lot. And we both sat there like, oh my god, they copied it. I mean, is A1 trying to make a new Guilty Crown? What the fuck is this thing? And that basically spiraled into this. Yeah, this is going on my bucket list, and we'll see about it later. And some months passed, and the whole thing went down. The anime released, and turns out the anime didn't score so well with audiences from everything we can see. If you enter right now on my anime list, I think the overall score is 6.8, 6.9, which is competent but not good. I feel like it is a bit overblown because of the studio, but I'm going to talk about that in my later. The thing is, I don't like A-1 Pictures in general as a studio nowadays. And if you listen to my episode with the guys from the Animaniacs, I have a hot take that I talk about at the start that is my general opinion about A-1 Pictures in general. That after they started the adaptation of SAO, Sword Art Online, they basically dropped everything off to anyone to do inside the studio, and basically everything that's not SAO related is badly done. It's done half-assed, whatever you want to say. And A1 Pictures has a track history of doing these multimedia projects, these original animes that they do, that is not great. The track history they have is really muddled up by some specific instances of really big hype and really low deliveries, sometimes atrocious, let's say, for their caliber. And this is the thing that I need to get out. I'm not criticizing because I don't like A1 in general. I don't like the way they do things considering the quality of work they do. So if you watch SAO from the first one to the new one, I don't actually know at this point what SAO is up to nowadays. I think the progressive series is still going, but whatever. The thing is, SAO is really well done. The animation's good, the presentation's good, the story is debatable but good, and the whole thing is a really nice anime, really entertaining piece of media. The other works that A1 has done, mainly their original works, not their adaptations. Their adaptations are arguably really good still, but you can see that they mostly focus on SAO in general. The thing is, A1, the last, let's say, original anime they did was back in 2016. And I'm not counting Darling in the Franxx, because Darling in the Franxx is mainly Studio Trigger's work with assistance from A1 Pictures. I do not count Darling in the Franxx when I say this, but A1 Pictures, the last original work that they did, that was their solo work, only them, was Quality Code in 2016, which was a huge, monumentous flop. It is not even, I can't sugarcoat it. The anime of Quality Code is a huge flop. I have not done a review on it, and I don't actually intend to, for the most part, unless a lot of people want to see it. But simple to say, Quality Code had so much hype, but delivered none of it. The whole hype train went head first into the ground, really spectacularly. It is a nice case of big hype and no delivery at all, to the point that I think most people dropped the anime when it was originally releasing, because some of those episodes are really, really bad. But I'm not here to talk about Quality Code today. I'm here to talk about Engage Kiss. And this basically is the context of how I entered this review. So I have this, and I need to be clear about it, I have this clear bias against A1 Picture original works. And for the most part, I wanted to be surprised. I wanted them to deliver me something nice, something that I could say that was really original, something a new IP, something that I would want a second season, something that I would go out, watch, and then after that I would be here saying, please have a second season. This was my expectation, and for the most part I wanted to see it like that. Now the thing is, for the most part I need to start the story here because I have to explain more or less what happens before I get to my opinion, because my opinion is a little bit more complicated and I need to give the context of what the hell is going on. So we start our story with our protagonist Ogata Shu. I'll talk about the naming. Shu in specific is, let's say, a trigger word because it reminds me of Guilty Crown again, because Shun, Shu, you know, it's basically the same thing. And we start with Ogata Shu, our main protagonist, and basically, the first episode is somewhat confusing, although the presentation is really well done because this is made by A-1 Pictures. I'll be really brief about this. The first episode, basically, we get introduced to this Rayon city that is this independent city-state on the Pacific Sea, that they have found this mystical mineral that can convert into clean energy and whatever, and they are basically the only state that has control over the refining and energy production. Basically they have this infinite energy kind of deal, but also on the side, the city is tormented by random attacks by demons. They call them demonic hazards. I don't actually remember what they really call it. They call it the hazards for the most part, but whatever. And the thing is, they have to cover it up. The government has to cover it up from the general public because otherwise they would have, for some reason, interference from outside forces. So basically the big powers of the world would send troops and have military intervention inside the city and whatever, and that would end up being the pretext to everybody knowing about the technology they use to get this infinite energy mineral that they have. That being said, they have these hazards, these demonic attacks, and they have to fight it off. Obviously, police can't do anything because obviously in an anime with demons, the demons don't take damage from normal lead bullets. So there's this whole underground, let's say under the wraps, market of PMCs, private military corporations, companies that operate in Rayon City, that are contracted by the government. Basically they have this whole bidding system, so they bid on the most effective and least expensive countermeasures package, let's say, for each of the D hazards that appear, and so whoever wins it has to fight the demons. It comes out as something really bureaucratic in a way, so it became kind of commonplace at this point, let's say, for those inside this kind of market. And really, at this point, really, for me at the very least, makes it seem like the hazards they at first were something that made people surprised and worried, but at some point it became a commodity, more or less. It seems like people just deal with it nowadays, and there's no really a risk to it. If people die, they just die. It makes the stakes of the threat of the demons really low. It makes it seem like the demons are a little more than a nuance rather than a huge threat to the city and whatever. That being said, so we get Ogata Shu, who's this solo guy at the very beginning of the first episode. He's the solo guy that operates one of these PMCs, a really small firm, INS office, and basically he as a solo guy, and basically they try try to build this in his character that he lowballs everyone every time, so basically cuts off the competitions inside the bits. So basically he's not liked by anyone of the other PMCs. That being said, so we get to the fight at the beginning, and we see that these hazards happen randomly with normal people for no apparent reason that they can find, and for the most part, nobody that actually appears there to try to fight it actually does any damage. So normal people can't fight demons. Who would have thought? But then we get introduced to our main heroine, the girl on the cover, and that looks like, the lot. Kisara. Kisara has no surname, so whatever. Kisara is Shu's, let's say, to-be lover. She wants to be. And to cut it short, after they kiss, she gets a power-up, transforms, and fights the demon with a sword. Really a nice design of a sword, let's say. And fights the demon, and easy peasy, we all go home. That being said, we get this whole world building that actually Shu has Kisara as this wants to be lover, and Ayano, who's the other girl that happens to know a lot about Shu, and at this point the characterization of these two, the relation of them, is really strange because it seems like they have been engaged for some time, but at the same time you can tell that something went wrong, and Shu for some reason appears not to, let's say, he appears like he wants to deflect blame for whatever reason that he did something that went wrong, and at this point we don't actually know. But then as the story goes on, and for the most part, the first episode has the introduction of Shu, Kisara, Ayano, and this concept of Shu has to kiss Kisara so she can transform, and actually she's the only one that actually can kill demons. And for the most part, from the second episode to, I don't actually know, the 7th episode, I don't actually remember, they have this really huge world building. Some of the people, they drop a lot of people really fast into the story to make this world building, to make this seem important, to try to present everybody who actually takes a role in this thing. But then the thing is, it becomes really thin to a point that I cannot truly tell you what the hell happens after the first episode. They have a bit of the villain of the week, so there are more demon hazards that appear, and Kisara always kisses Shu and gets this transformation, fights the demon, defeats the demon, and there's this whole thing. Always the demon ends up being defeated by a combination of Shu and Kisara, because Shu has this, I would say, really strange flintlock 50 BMG pistol that fires magical bullets for some reason, and they introduce a whole lot of nuances to the world. So the fact that actually the police can actually fight the demons because they can't use heavy caliber weapons, although you can't really, they just gloss over it and never really explain why or what the hell is the Heavy Weapons Act that they call, and why it was passed in the first place if something like that exists, and why the PMCs in the first place if you have the police, or if you could build an army. I have to assume, and this is me theorizing here, that it is a way to more or less mimic the way that Japan works, because they don't actually have an army. They have the self-defense force, but that's not exactly an army. But still, that's besides the point. The thing is, as the story progresses, we get more people introduced. So we get the mayor, the vice mayor, the fact that the whole upper part of the executive power in the city is a single family with, you can guess, nepotism or whatever. Although they don't actually show that they have elections, nor a council, but still. And we get this thing where actually Shu at the beginning of the story, at the very least, he's a really small PMC. He's a solo guy, basically, living with Kisara for the most part. But Kisara, for one, at the start, she's a high school student, and Shu is already an adult and whatever. But Shu is basically down his luck without a penny to spare, so he cannot pay his bills and basically anything that he has to pay to live as a normal adult. He cannot, because he has no money. So lowballing all the other PMCs comes at a cost, and basically they make fun of him at the start for this, so much so that at some point Kisara has to, let's say, cook in the dark, because he has no electricity or gas at his office/home. And the whole thing runs around the fact that Shu is a penniless idiot. Ayano and Kisara catfight each other for Shu for some reason, and Shu in general is not a likable character, at the very least for me. The story goes on, and we have this whole villain of the week kind of deal, until a certain point where they decide to finally introduce some overarching plot, I think by episode 6, that actually all the demon attacks are connected, and that for some reason Shu has this objective that he uses Kisara to do it. Basically, whenever Kisara transforms, she has to take something from Shu. The one thing that she takes from him are his memories. So the more time that Shu keeps on fighting the demons, the more memories he loses. So this explains why, for the most part, although Ayano has implied that he has a whole lot of huge relationship with him for a long time, he does not remember a lot of it. And for the most part, a whole lot of other people start to catch up to the fact that Shu doesn't actually remember some things that are, let's say, some things that marked him, let's say, formed him as the person he is nowadays. And that ends up being the why. Kisara actually is a demon, and she has a contract with Shu, so he sells his memories, let's say, provisionally, and so she can fight. And then we eventually get the explanation of why Shu does this, why he has this contract with her. The fact is, 12 years ago, when the city was at its beginnings, and the magical mineral had just been discovered, Shu's parents and his little sister were killed in an explosion in one of the mines that they used to mine this thing. But Shu, for some reason, believes that this was all planned, and that actually his sister is still alive, although he's pretty certain that his mother and father passed away. His sister is still alive somewhere, and he wants to recover her, to save her. And basically his method to reach that is to use Kisara as power to fight demons and eventually find the culprit and save his sister and redeem his late father, because for some reason some of the things that happened left his family's name dirty with something that happened. It's not really well explained, but still. And so there's this huge mystery where they go around and find people, and people get killed by another demon that appears out of nowhere, and the whole thing goes around and round and round. And in between of that, we have Shu and Ayano and Kisara living and having the cat fights, and Shu eventually even sleeps with Ayano again. And then we get to actually discover that they were at some point girlfriend and boyfriend, but then they broke up for some reason. We have a whole lore dump at this point. In the, let's say, the 8 episodes that happen, we have a whole lore dump, a whole world building, some things that don't actually help a lot. And then we get the whole trope of, at the point where Ayano catches up to the fact that Shu is losing himself, fighting with Kisara, she confronts him of, you will die if you keep going with her, and he reassures her that he wants to do it because he has an objective and so on and so forth. This whole thing happens. It turns out that one of Shu's mentors / paternal figures, it's actually the bad guy, and they have this huge explanation that actually the guy was coerced into doing a thing in order to get his daughter saved from chronic illness that she had. And this is the spoiler alert, right? I should have said this before, but spoiler alert, one of the paternal figures of Shu is actually the bad guy. And then they have this whole thing where actually they discover that Shu's mother was actually the incarnation of the big bad demon that actually birthed Shu's sister, and Shu's sister is actually the actual daughter of the big bad demon, and so that's why she actually vanished and was basically in an incubator for the last 12 years so she could become the big bad demon anew, because his mother passed away. And we discovered that actually the accident was caused by Shu's dad to kill the mother to save Shu for some reason, and the whole thing's a mess. By the end, we see Shu nearly losing himself, and then at the side of his love almost losing himself inside this whole thing, Kisara gives up all his memories again and gives up her memories, so she forgets who he is. And then he gets to fight his little sister and more or less save his little sister. And the ending is that corny stuff where a cat fight, and we don't actually know who he chooses at the end. And that's the whole story of Engage Kiss. Really botched version, but whatever. So now, for my opinion, I wanted to keep this review less than 40 minutes, but I don't think I will achieve that. So, for my opinion and general critique of this anime. So, as I previously already said, the presentation is really nice. The animation is really nice at some times and competent at others. That is to say, the average is pretty good. Now, I have to talk about story. The music has a little bit that I want to talk about, but it's really just 2 notes. The thing is the story. The story is not engaging, let's say. It really left me hanging for the most part. The story has this whole thing where every one of the main characters, Shu, Ayano, and Kisara, for the most part, they are all known quantities. Although this is a new IP, and for the most part a new series, it comes up as a derivative set of characters. And that is hard to say, considering that we are talking about anime, because for the most part, as I already said in many of my reviews, and anybody can attest to it, the archetypes in anime are not limited in the general sense, but limited by the industry. So that is to say that we know all the normal archetypes for your general anime or manga for the most part, but at the same time, in all this repetition, we can find the subtle difference that make any character different from the other. The thing about Engage Kiss is that the problem is not the repetition of the same tropes. It's not if it's a yandere, a tsundere, or whatever. The problem is that even in the nuances, it feels like I have already seen this. All the characters carry so much of the nuances from other characters from other series. It is not, let's say, apparent at first. It really comes up later or in hindsight, but it feels like all of the, let's say, the nuanced tropes that we see, they all come back from somewhere. In specific, the one that really really took me for a ride. And considering that A1 Pictures worked on Darling the Franxx, this really hit me on the face, really on the nose, let's say. It was the situation where, and this may as well be to be blamed on the design of the characters, but there is this part at the beginning where we don't actually know what Kisara does to Shu, so Shu becomes, let's say, this apathetic guy that Ayano, who looks a lot like Ichigo from Darling the Franxx, looks at the main character and says that if you keep working with her, you will die. It's not really what she says. I'm paraphrasing here, but it comes out like this, and for the most part, it comes out precisely as Darling the Franxx when Ichigo says to Hiro, if you keep riding with her, you will die. And then he reassures her that that's what he wants. And not only that, but it comes up later on when after we discover that she takes his memories, that she has that 02 moment where she reassures him just to take his memories again, and really is on the nose, right? It really is explicit that they basically took the same premise and did it again. I'm not saying that they actively did that, but it certainly is jarring to draw the comparison and see that the same studio did let's say twice in the span of 4 years. But still, not only that, but this is the one part. A lot of the tropes are really, let's say, it gives a deja vu. Let's say Kisara also has her moments as, let's say, more at the start, really, where I don't know, he's talking with Shu about working with Kisara and all. It really reminded me of Guilty Crown, when Haru starts to question Inori's intentions with Shu and the whole thing. And also Kisara has the moments where it reminded me a lot of Yuno from Mirai Nikki, because there is that moment where, oh, he praised me, and then she starts to kill people. In this case, were kill demons, but the feeling is the same. You know what I'm saying. The feeling that, oh, I saw this already. It permeates this anime for the most part, and it really hits a certain note that feels really off. For the most part, I was looking for something different, you know what? And this is not it. But besides that is just, let's say, a little nitpick compared to the real problem of this anime. And basically, the main problem that I see with the writing on this anime, aside from the fact that Kisara and Ayano are really just not likable in general, they just don't vibe with me. I don't know. I don't have a concrete reason of why, but for the most part, the chemistry is not there. I don't know if it's a scripting thing or whatever, but it's not really there for me. The main problem with this anime is Shu and the fact that he loses his memories. So it is implied at the very beginning that Shu is a nice guy and he has been deteriorating the last whatever so years that Ayano has been with him as a friend and then as a girlfriend, and then after they broke up, she never let go of him. She still loved him, and for some reason he broke up and appeared with a new girl, and Ayano is jealous about it, and the whole thing works down from there. But the thing is, Shu's not likable as a character. I found it really, really hard to actually see his side of the story and like him. Because for the most part at the beginning, he's really just, why do people fight over this guy? And to be fair, most of the harem protagonists out there, you could say that. I know that it's ironic that I'm saying it after reviewing so many of harem anime, but at the same time, the anime never really shows his cool part, where other anime take their time to show where the guy is cool and his growth as a person, and the moment that makes him liked by the girls. Engaged Kiss doesn't take its time to show why Shu is liked. It just assumes that he is liked from moment zero and doesn't convey to the audience what makes him liked. So it's more of a problem that we as audience don't see him as a nice guy. We see him as a normal guy. And it comes out as confusing of why the girls fight over him if he's just a normal guy. And not only that, at some points with the fact that he loses his memories and talks shit a lot, at some point he comes out as a jerk. It really becomes difficult to root for the guy, and he's not likable for the most part. Which brings me again to the thing I was talking about. Kisara and Ayano, I don't like them. But for the most part, I don't like Shu because he is not a nice protagonist. For the most part, he has no redeemable features whatsoever. He has a nice superpower. I mean, grabbing this single shot 50 BMG pistol and shooting magic out of it, it's pretty nice. But again, that's just it. Let's say personal soft skills wise, he's not charismatic. He's just a poor guy without anything. Why do these girls fight over him? That's the question that comes up a lot. And then we go to the second thing that the writing really just goes wrong. The way that they evolve the story as he loses more and more memories throughout the development of the episodes, and the fact that we eventually get to see that Kisara actually, when she takes his memories, she can target specific things. It becomes really, I don't know what's the word for that. It's not jarring. It is just idiotic at some point. Because, for one, the stakes get real low at some points. He starts to lose so many memories that the reason he fights becomes blurry for himself. And that is, I mean, it's a logical conclusion that eventually he would be so out of memories that she would take something like that. But at the point that his determination is not really determined, it becomes blurry whether or not he would be fighting like he's fighting, right? And what I'm trying to say is that the stakes get real low when he forgets what price he's paying. At some point he forgets straight up the relationship he has with Ayano. Later on we get introduced to a third girl named Sharon that had somewhat romantic relationship with him before Ayano, and he doesn't actually remember any of it. There is this huge breaking point at the later stages of the anime where he sleeps with Ayano for let's say a second time, and Kisara straight up steals those memories from him the moment she transforms the next chance. And then Ayano comes up, talks about the fact, and he doesn't actually remember. That's the point where the anime actually acknowledges that he losing his memories is actually a big deal, and that he is losing himself. He, as a person, is losing himself. But at the same time, at some point, he fights the paternal figure and then forgets who the guy is. And the stakes basically don't actually exist. So he forgets the significance of the guy he just fought and killed and starts talking shit. And at this point, it becomes really ludicrous to ask me as audience to care about the guy. Because at this point, I don't like the guy. At this point, I don't actually like this guy whatsoever. And he's losing himself, and I'm seeing let's say, this path of destruction. I don't know, I'm just along for the ride. I'm not rooting for him to recover or whatever. I don't like the guy. So I don't know whether the anime lost me way earlier and I should like the protagonist more, like the protagonists more, the girls and Shu, but I just didn't care. At the end, I just didn't care. The last 3 episodes is their revival and the fight against the little sister, and at this point I didn't really care about anything really. At that point, I was just waiting for the anime to be over because the story is kind of ludicrous. The lore dump that they do in the first 6 episodes or so is just fluff. It doesn't actually add anything. There are a lot of characters that they present that don't actually matter for the most part. The whole thing feels so empty. And I don't like to use this kind of wording. I think it's way too meta to actually matter. But you are telling me a story about a guy who has an objective that has to contract a demon so he can find his little sister. But at some point, and this is a major plot hole that appears and really made me just lose the whole suspension of disbelief or whatever. They say that he is together with Kisara for at the very least 1 year since he returned to Byron City with Kisara. And then I just thought, hold on, 1 year? If we take the, let's say, the rate of demon hazards that we see in the anime as happening across a year, he shouldn't have any of his memories anymore. By the rate and the quantity of memories that he loses from fight to fight, I don't know how this guy is upright. I don't know how he has the notion of his own name at this point. Because if they fought the amount they fought in the same quantity of time they fought for the last year, he shouldn't have any memories anymore. And at the point that I realized that, the whole anime just came crumbling down for me. Like, okay, this story just doesn't make any sense. Because they say that Kisara has been fighting demons for a long time since she came to the city. And given that, I know that plot convenience and plot shield is a thing, but at the same time, what the fuck? The guy wasted 1 year without finding anything about his sister? Why am I seeing this now? These are the things that I think about when I'm watching this. And clearly, I'm way too critical of this. I'm already clarified. I'm kind of biased when talking about original work coming from A-1 Pictures. But again, I was hoping that this anime would be good and a nice new IP. But as it turns out, it was not. At the very least, flawed execution, pretty nice presentation, as I already said. Just a reminder, when I talk about presentation, it's art style, photography, so the way they present the scenes and the whole, how they present the anime, the composure of the scenes, the images, the whole thing, that is pretty good. Just as a reminder, this is the same studio that made The Idolmaster and Idolmaster Cinderella Girls, which were really well done anime, outright chef's kiss. That being said, I have to just a little bit about the music. I don't like the opening because it's way too happy and way too... It feels out of place considering the thematic of this anime. Same goes for the ending. Just a little bit that I don't want to drag this along way more. This anime has a clear problem of not knowing what note it's on. So at one point it is a normal rom-com, at one point it wants to be serious, at one point it wants to be tragic, and it never settles on one of them. And I mean, there are cases where it can be done with multiple tones, multiple themings. This is not one of them. The delivery is really botched, really scuffed for the most part. The theming gets thrown around, the girls fighting in inopportune times, the comedic time really being bad. The whole thing just doesn't work as a package. And that's about it. So if you like my work, if you like what I do, thank you for listening. Please, if you can, like, share, follow, subscribe, depending on the platform you're in. Please join the Discord if you can, share with a friend. And I hope you stick around. Bye.